Hello, we are students from the Department of Community and Global Health from the University of Tokyo Graduate School of Medicine. Today, we'd like to present to you about the cultural considerations of vaccination in Japan and Nepal. The content of our presentation today will be divided into four sections. First, we'll be showing you a video clip that we students created. We made showing the situation in Japan. Second, the current policy in Japan and Nepal. After that, we'll be discussing about the ethical consideration, and we will conclude. So first, we'd like to show you a video clip that we had made regarding the current situation in Japan from Vaccine Hesitators for the COVID-19 vaccine. So please enjoy.
I'll briefly introduce current situation about COVID-19 vaccination in Japan. Until November 25th, 2021, the share of people fully vaccinated in Japan is 77%, and the share of who got just one shot is 79.2%. According to the National Center of Neurology and Psychiatry, the share of vaccine hesitator in Japan is 11.3%.
I'd like to briefly introduce about the current situation of COVID in Nepal. The first case identified was on January 13, 2020. After that, the confirmed cases has reached approximately 8,200,000 and nearly 11,000 deaths has occurred till November 27, 2021. Here in the graph, we can see the total deaths that has occurred, and the deaths is highest among the youngest people. It could possibly due to negligence in the first phase of COVID-19, which took lives of many people. And here in Nepal, the aggravating factors for death are mostly the lack of strong commitment of government to combat the severity of illness, and also the black marketing of essential medicines for COVID-19. And the government of Nepal, the preparedness and response was only in the later half, when the government initiated nationwide lockdown for more than 7 months and established isolation and quarantine facilities all over the country. However, the consequences of COVID-19 is not only the loss of lives due to COVID, but also because of suicide and domestic violence, which occurred side by side during the time of lockdown, and also the loss of income source, and mostly the loss of trust towards the government among the people.
Next, I will talk about the social and cultural factor in Japan and the characteristics of vaccine hesitator from the group. We have interviewed some people, and there were some characteristics that could seen in common. And one is distrust in media. The people we interviewed said that they do not believe in the existence of COVID, and they do not believe the information through the media. And also many people said that mentioned about the distrust in the government, and they are very skeptic about the safety of the vaccine, or believe that the vaccine itself is toxic and harmful for their body. And also some people mentioned about the conspiracy theory that the vaccine includes or contains the microchip induced in our body, or when you get vaccine, it connects to 5G, or you start sending the Bluetooth. And these are all rooted in misinformation. And also for the characteristics, according to a study conducted with 26,000 people on the internet survey, these characteristics could be seen in common for the people with vaccine hesitancy, such as living alone, or lower annual income, lower education, and the distrust in the government, or the having severely depressed.
The social and cultural factors in Nepal. The first is misinformation. Information like the vaccine is unsafe for pregnant women and the vaccinated people are prone to have severe adverse effects, including death, has led to vaccine hesitancy among the certain communities and among the pregnant women. Mistrust towards efficacy of vaccine. The people have shown doubt on the efficacy of the Chinese-made vaccine. As a result, people have been showing hesitancy to take vaccinated, which is made available by the government. The third is inclination towards alternative medicine. The alternative medicine like Ayurveda, herbal medicines, traditional healers, homeopathy with the Unani are culturally incorporated within the community, and they believe that these sort of the alternative medicine do not have severe adverse effects as compared to the vaccinations and the allopathic medicine. As a result, people have shown their inclination towards the alternative medicine. And the next is geographical isolation. Certain communities are deprived of the awareness on the vaccination, and they believe that the coronavirus is a rumor and they do not exist, and the vaccination is also not needed. Hence, this sort of the social and cultural factors has led to vaccine hesitancy in Nepal.
Okay, let's move on to current policy in Japan. In fact, Japan has had no strict countermeasures against COVID-19 so far, such as the US or European countries. For instance, we have never experienced lockdown restriction anywhere in Japan. Instead of lockdown, national government and local governments have sometimes declared the state of emergency, depending on the increase of COVID-19 cases, and requested people to implement non-pharmaceutical interventions. As we already introduced vaccine rate in Japan, the Japanese government has been running a very successful vaccine campaign, although we have fallen behind in the race in the beginning.
I'd like to briefly introduce about the COVID-19 management policy introduced by Nepal. The local level and government level, they collaboratively worked from their own side. At the local level, the local government made people aware about washing hands, physical distancing, and wearing masks. And also, clinical checkup centers were established for symptom monitoring and also for counseling, and supportive package were made available for vulnerable groups like old age people and disabled people. And from the government level, government was also forward in making people aware about taking precaution measures, and the crowds and gatherings and holding of functions were strictly controlled. And the most amazing service that Nepal government initiated was availability of COVID helpline service 24-hour, and also the management of quarantine and contact tracing. And still, Nepal government is appealing for importing vaccines from different vaccine companies and making the vaccination campaign successful. And also for the people with non-communicable disease, the telemedicine and home-based preventive management service were made effective.
So what are the ethical considerations when looking to continue or expand public policy regarding vaccination going forward in these two different cultures, both of which contain subordinated cultures which have serious doubts or declared disbelief in vaccination? To consider this issue, first I'd like to introduce the concept of positive deviance, which is the theory that every community already contains certain individuals or groups whose uncommon yet achievable behaviors help them overcome adversity within the same context as their peers. In health implementation research, the positive deviance approach, pioneered by Monique and Jerry Sternin, is considered on a pillar as it promotes the creation of sustainable and contextually appropriate interventions that can be used to combat some of the most seemingly insurmountable issues. Examples of when it has been used include the chronic childhood malnutrition in Vietnam, improving school attendance in sub-Saharan Africa, or promoting social cohesion and integration of marginalized Roma communities in Eastern Europe. However, in the case of vaccine hesitation, where abstinence is viewed positively, any individual who decides to reject the messaging of public health and join the demonstration of those who are extremely vaccine hesitant, anybody who rejects allopathy and embraces Vedic or folk traditions for treatment or protection would be seen as a positive deviant. And I'll go next. The principle of cultural relativism, the view that ethical and social standards ought to reflect the cultural context from which they are derived, would tell us on ethical judgments concerning justice, beneficence, and the respect for persons' individuality. The principle of cultural relativism, the view that ethical and social standards ought to reflect the cultural context from which they are derived, would tell us on ethical judgments concerning justice, beneficence, and the respect for persons' individuality and cultural autonomy, that these positive deviants are performing admirably and ought to be protected, and that mandatory vaccinations are unjust. If these populations existed separate from the larger society, perhaps, the conversation could be ended there. However, the propagation of these illnesses, of SARS-CoV-2, relies on a susceptible reservoir, and eradication of them on a certain level of immunity across the population. Through their deviance, positive or otherwise, these populations not only fail to contribute to the general welfare, but continue to exist as a susceptible reservoir, potentially allowing for further propagation and degradation of the general welfare. Clearly, at this point, ethical principles and the aims of public health stand in opposition, and we're forced to ask ourselves, and of lawmakers, at what point can we ethically constrict an individual's autonomy in service of a collective benefit? Is subordinating or rejecting a belief system in favor of biomedicine ever appropriate?
In conclusion, we cannot force people to get vaccinated as a universal vaccine mandate ethically. However, the policymakers need to be considered to operate countermeasures widely while avoiding the factors that trigger vaccine hesitancy. So as our opinions, government and public health sectors should be trusted by the people in times of peace and implement appropriate and acceptable policies. Government, mass media, and health sectors should work together to disseminate information based on scientific evidence, taking great care to avoid misunderstanding. Also, we need to improve health literacy among Japanese people to address the deep-rooted fear of vaccines. That's all for our presentation as a Global Health Video Team project from U Tokyo. Thank you.